All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome our audience back to this second panel discussion. And really, now, as I'd mentioned yesterday, the intent of this panel is to provide you all with an opportunity to get to know our speakers a little bit better, allow them to take a little bit of a deeper dive into their work, and to share with you some of the insights about how they're integrating geodesign to improve what they do. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. So let's do a quick round of introductions. First, we're joined by Darren Welch, the National Geospatial Manager for HNTB.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I'm the National Geospatial Manager. I lead a team that supports all of HNTB's clients and projects nationwide. We like to think of ourselves as creative problem solvers first and foremost. Really finding new ways to certainly innovate, but also change the perspective of what we're trying to solve. Meaning, we all deal with data, and we like to think about how can we take that data, turn the data into information, something a little more meaningful, and from that create knowledge. And really what we're trying to empower our teams with more is more informed decision making. And I think that's why geodesign fits so well into what we're trying to do within our industry, within the AEC space, is really use the rich data sets we have, the ability to continually iterate on those based on a number of factors, both outside and ones that we can influence, and take that and turn it into more powerful information and knowledge for that decision making. It's something that our clients are certainly looking for with constrained budgets and timeframes in many cases, and something that we really pride ourselves on as it's a challenge for us, and we like embracing those challenges as part of that creative problem solving.
Excellent. Thanks, Darren. So next we have Emilie Jordao, a project manager at Avenue Consultants.
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. My name is Emilie. I am a project manager at Avenue Consultants, and I really got into the geodesign space because, throughout my whole life trajectory, really, I got a bachelor's in biology and then a master's in landscape architecture. So then I had science and design, and then I started working as a planner, which is, this third pillar of my work. So I really tried to bring it all together. And when I found geodesign, I found my people and I found my space. At Avenue Consultants, we're an engineering and a land development company based out of Utah. So we're located in Taylorsville, Utah, and we have many different types of groups within our company. So we have the planning group, transit, design, and a really robust public involvement group. And our one of our main goals is to really encourage cross-pollination between all of these different groups. So I think that's really what, makes a lot of the projects that we do really strong, because we always cross-pollinating and, listening to each other. So excited to share about our project here today.
Melding a scientist with a designer, that's a dangerous combination. I knew there was reason. Yeah. That's great. Well, next we have Devin Levine, the principal and co-founder of Houseal Levine Associates.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. So my name is Devin Levine. I am the principal and one of the co-founders of Houseal Levine Associates. 16 years it's been since we started our company. And we are an urban planning and design firm with, I think, a very strong specialization in geospatial. And we focus on what we say evidence-based decision making. And by that, I think the cleanest way to say it is we power the art of planning, which is urban planning, with science and technology. So we take a lot of pride in approaching every assignment creatively, collaboratively, working with our clients, working with the community constituents and the communities that we're serving. And then I think over and above all excellence, we sort of are always continuing to push ourselves, trying to make sure we deliver, I think, impactful and creative solutions. And, I think we've set forth a great reputation for our firm. And we're based in Chicago and, as of last year, Pasadena, California. And from those two offices, we provide services all over the United States. And I can say this, speak for my entire staff. I think everyone on board loves what we do, and we just approach everything with, I think, a level of enthusiasm. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and looking forward to the rest of our discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Devin. And finally, we're joined by Timothy Griffin, a senior research fellow at the Minnesota Design Center at the University of Minnesota.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tim Griffin. I'm an architect and city planner by training. And for the last 5 years, I've been working in the Minnesota Design Center, which is located in the College of Design at the University of Minnesota. And we have a long relationship back to the IGC and some of the other ideas and initiatives. Prior to that, about 15 years, I was the director of the St. Paul Design Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, working on reconnecting primarily to the Mississippi River, so that body of work. And I'm speaking to you today from the Mississippi River and a project that we started in 2001. And my wife wisely decided we should move to it. So it's great to complete a cycle like that. The design centers work back with Geodesign, at least for me anyway, was back to 2018 when Carl Steinitz came and did a series of lectures over 2 or 3 years. Out of that lecture, I taught a design studio using Geodesign, and we presented at the 2019 IGC conference, where we were constructively critiqued and told how to follow the methodology in Geodesign. And we then got a number of books and things. We took it to heart. We came back in 2020 and took Best of Show on one of our presentations on the Green New Deal. So we're quick learners and really looking forward to it. Our work now has been going, and we'll talk about later in the presentation, has been going into this area of community engagement and in Geodesign. And starting with the Green New Deal, we added 2 layers to the 10 innovation layers, the 2 optional ones in terms of economic development and equity by design. So I look forward to talking more about that later today.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Tim. And really, thanks all of you for being with us here at the Summit at Large, and then, of course, agreeing to join us on this panel. It's really because of folks like yourself, and the reason you folks are here is because I've found your work to be particularly compelling, really inspirational, and important to the geodesign community. And what you'll notice as a common thread amongst all of you today is that you really excel in the integration of stakeholder input into your design process. And that's really the heart of this panel that we've assembled. So, like I had told our fellow panelists yesterday, I would much rather be on the stage with you folks in sunny Southern California, having our normal event. But here we are in the virtual sense, and it is going really well. And like we talked about yesterday too, there's all these kind of unanticipated perks of operating in this virtual event. Since the panel yesterday, for example, some other folks have reached out and shared with me some of their perks. Some of those that I've heard that I really liked is having your dog curled up at your feet to be a nice foot warmer. Or one of the other perks is not having to deal with that stuff that's growing in the office break room microwave. Right? We've all seen that microwave in our offices, right? So those are, of course, really nice perks. But the one that I've heard lots of feedback on, again, is everyone's favorite, is this notion of having meetings without pants, right? So my first question is for you, Darin. How many pantsless meetings have you had so far during the pandemic? Now, I will stop you before you answer. We're going to leave that a mystery for everyone. But it is certainly a nice thing that we've been able to work with a little bit. So switching gears to the more serious tone, I do actually have a serious question for you, Darin. And it's really this. So You folks at HNTB really are leaders in effectively engaging stakeholders as part of your project delivery process. And yesterday you shared with us a presentation about how GeoPI is really a critical ingredient in your approach. Now, it's one thing for folks to solicit comments and feedback on a project, and it's another thing, it's actually geodesign, to integrate and iterate on that feedback that you receive from our constituents. So what makes you folks so effective in doing that? And what advice do you have for others that would like to enhance that element of their own work?
Sure, yeah, great question. So let me frame kind of our approach, first of all, to public engagement. What we try to do is engage in a way that just doesn't say we're trying to check a box, right? That we held this many meetings, we had this many comment periods. What we're really trying to do as part of engagement is create conversation with the public, with the individuals that have a stake in our project. So when we begin a project, we really think about, in addition to regulatory requirements like NEPA that we certainly want to satisfy, but we really ask ourselves at every instance where we want to have an opportunity to engage with the public, we ask ourselves 3 questions. What information is important to share with the public at this stage? What information do we want back from the public? And how are we going to use that information that we're collecting? So as we address that in our instances of engagement, and the feedback is starting to roll in, we're constantly kind of assessing what the people are saying and how they're supporting maybe certain aspects of the project, maybe others that they aren't supporting. Those first 2 questions that I mentioned, they really help us develop our messaging and certainly the questions that we're trying to hear back from them. So those 2 boxes are a little easier to check as the feedback is rolling in, obviously. But the third item, the third question, how do we want to use this information? That's really where geodesign starts to play more of a factor. That's where we can start evaluating location, and that's where we really coined that term GeoPI. So when we engage with stakeholders, and we've created this as kind of a standard now, standard practice we do is if we're engaging with the stakeholders, let's ask them the question of location. Maybe sometimes we'll ask them multiple location questions. We want them to tell us not just that they're supportive of something or that they're, a certain topic is of importance to them, but we want to know where that is. We've got this rich platform of ArcGIS Online, right? Why not extend that to the stakeholders to say, tell us more about what's important to you on this project. So by allowing them to share where, we can capture part of that, right? We're capturing where they have told us issues are important to them on the project, but because they're also sharing with us some contact information like address or maybe just zip code at times, we can also dial that in a little bit further. And from that, we can really perform 2 activities. One is start using that feedback, whether it's their location that they've indicated or it's the location maybe they live. Again, even if it's just zip code, we can start refining project alternatives based on that feedback. And secondly, we can also assess whether we are truly getting a representative portion of the project population. Sometimes we're dealing with statewide projects, as I mentioned in the presentation, 300 miles. Sometimes we're dealing with, 20 or more counties of a region of California, very diverse, right, populations, very diverse demographics. So we really want to understand, are we capturing representative feedback from the public? We also want to evaluate things like environmental justice and disadvantaged communities. And so we want to pull in other data sources like maybe from census or additional surveys that an agency maybe has solicited to their region. And from that, we can assess whether or not we're reaching areas that may not have access to these tools. I think that's another important factor here is even though we're all getting used to more virtual and electronic means of interaction, that doesn't mean we're still reaching everyone. So if we're looking at those additional assessments of disadvantaged communities, especially that don't have access to things like smartphones as prevalent, and we feel like that's been minimal in our outreach, then we need to go to more, call it traditional methods, but still effective methods of other tools like mailings, establishing community information centers, transit center kiosks. those are still very effective ways to get the message out and solicit feedback from the public. But let's keep incorporating location into those means as well, right? Let's use that as part of our analysis. So through that ensure the evaluation and iteration of more alternatives, and include that in an approach that also has things like accessibility in mind. But what we're really trying to do is ensure we reach full participation. And that way, when we're doing things like the bridge alternative project example that I shared, going through many iterations of alternatives and public engagement is at least one of the aspects of how we're trying to determine what that replacement bridge should be. We know we have more confidence that at least our audience was informed, but also that they were a part of the conversation around those decisions.
Well, thanks a lot, Darren. And those really focused questions that you asked yourself about how you engage is really insightful. Thanks for sharing that. So my next question is for you, Emilie. So like Darren, your presentation really stressed how engagement and the digitally transformed way in which you folks facilitate it, really particularly in this time of COVID, has really been critical to your project's success. So I'm interested in what was really the steepest portion of the learning and delivery curve for you folks as you transition to these more digitally and geospatially supported engagement approaches, and how you overcome those things, and what elements of them you think you and your practice will continue to use when we're actually able to get together again.
Those are really good questions. And luckily, we were already using ArcGIS Online for a lot of our projects pre-pandemic. So for folks that, haven't seen my presentation, or, just a quick intro to that was that we used a series of Esri online tools to build engagement with the public and the stakeholders. So one of them was a ArcGIS Experience website that had the interactive comment map that I built out of the crowdsource reporter solution that Esri offers, and a survey 123 that was also integrated. In that ArcGIS Experience website, we also had existing conditions, the vision and goals of the project. So lots of information about the project for folks. So luckily we were using ArcGIS Online. It's really user-friendly. So even though some of these tools had a higher, learning curve, like the crowdsource reporter took me a second to figure it out. But it was really worth it to do survey, comment map, and website on ArcGIS Online platform, because before, even though we were doing all of these things, we were using 3 to 4 different platforms. Survey in one, map in another one, website in another one. But keeping it all in ArcGIS Online really helped us streamline the back end of things. So when we're going to download all that information, it's all geolocated. I can download it as a shapefile or as a geodatabase. So that was really, really helpful. That really streamlined the process a lot and saved us a lot of time. So I guess, just sitting down and learning, how to set up crowd-sized reporter, survey into 3, and ArcGIS Experience. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you're done, you're just so glad you did it that way. But then thinking about the second part of the question is, what were we going to bring forward into the future? And I think the answer is everything. And we really are hoping to come back to the in-person strategies as soon as we can, as safe as we can, because there's no amount of online engagement that can really replace the one-on-one face-to-face conversations with the people that live in the cities and the towns that we are, hoping to make the change. So, I really hope that, all these tools that we developed serve the purpose of gathering, a feedback during a pandemic. It served the purpose to say, folks, hey, it's not because things are complicated and difficult out there that we're not going to listen to you. We're still going to find ways. As soon as we can, we want to also come back and talk to you face to face. So I think, that builds in resilience, because we are now, we learned all of these things, and God forbid, if there's another pandemic or something, similar where we can't meet, these tools are there, and people, start to feel a little more confident that, okay, things, even though things are moving differently, I still have a say. And I think I also wanted to really emphasize the fact that, like Darin mentioned, the online space, it cannot be, sometimes it's not all it doesn't include everyone, because, people either don't have access to the internet, or, it takes a little bit of some getting used to, and some folks just can't, comment on a map in a survey. So finding ways, again, like Darin said, to reach out regardless, through mail or through what we did. We made flyers and posted on, grocery stores, senior homes. They had a hotline number that they could call us, and we would fill the survey with them on the phone. So there is, ways to do that, but I hope that, all of these strategies will complement the face-to-face strategies, and, even other strategies in the future.
Great, Emilie. Thanks for sharing with us your journey and how you folks have enhanced that with this. And I love that take-home point of, just because times are tough, right, doesn't mean we're able to forego some of these really critical elements of our project work. So completely agree. Our next question is for you, Devin. And really, as your presentation with Mark yesterday illustrated, you folks are truly masterful in immersing your clients in these digital representations of your designs. And doing so is a form of engagement similar to what Darin and Emilie have shared with us previously, right? So why is this so critical to your firm's success? And why is this something that I always see in a Houseal Lavigne project? And how does that enhance this relationship that you folks have with your clients, and ultimately are able to deliver above and beyond for them?
Good question. I think if I go back to how and when we started back in 2004, I think we always had a reputation for having attractive plans. And when I think about, 16 years ago, we were conservative with how many color graphics we would put in the plan, knowing the print cost would be a factor. So, but we still found a way, I think, to make attractive plans, and we had to keep pace with technology. So I look at where we're at now, and I think all we've done is we've taken that same mindset of there's these cliche statements you hear in planning. We don't want a document that sits on a shelf, and really what we've done is we've turned them into PDFs, and they sit on a website. Not much has changed, except it's not a bookshelf anymore. It's a digital file. And as we've sort of started to evolve as a firm, 3D, I think, has always been important. The second we started to jump in and use City Engine and the other 3D tools, it's almost, there's an expectation that when you see a project, there's going to be some 3D perspective or something that presents the plan or its recommendations differently. So it used to be 3D was nice, now it's almost expected. And a big part of that is the audience of plans have changed. It used to be, these documents would sit in City Hall. Well, now they're on their websites and they're used by all different types of people. And with that broader audience, there needs to be just different considerations in how we're going to present. And so when I look at what we're doing now in game engines and where we're immersing people in these 3D environments, to me, it's an evolution of kind of our founding principles of application of technology to a planning process to make the right recommendations or to get people excited about redevelopment. In the case with Glen Ellen, the community wants to see change in their downtown, except when a developer comes forward with a proposal, they sort of back away, and it's not what they want, or it's not what they think they want. And so what we've done is given them the ability to stand in the downtown, to look at the development so they can see what it's like.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Devin. So my next question then is for you, Tim. Like all of the others on today's panel, really, one of the truly exemplary elements of what you and Joni have shown us over the course of the last several years is how well you effectively engage and integrate that stakeholder input. And for you folks, particularly in rural communities, what's really the most critical lesson that you've learned about how to engage those types of folks so effectively? And what are those critical ingredients that are really important for you folks to be able to do so effectively that you might share with others?
Good question. Happy to answer that very early in a kind of a process design exercise. We probably are approaching 10 conversations at this point, but in the first one's actually applying the design for community regeneration in rural Minnesota, and it's been evolving and changing. I'll share a few things about that with you. All along, we've really focused on these idea of point of view teams and developing 4 alternative approaches or value-based approaches based on the innovation deck and what kind of a menu you create for geodesign. So that's really been a kind of in the forefront. Initially, those teams were kind of persona-based, if you will, but now we're trying to actually make them real people. And we're in the midst of creating a 50-person cohort for 12-person teams that we're leading through this process in Warren, Minnesota, a small town of 2,500 people. One of the things that's emerged is this notion of when the University of Minnesota is a land-grant college and is challenged to work statewide. So the urban-rural divide and all that conversation is so important to our work. And what we found is to create these clusters of 3 cities, a smaller city, a larger city, and then an in-between type of city, in a geographic region. And our goal over, in the fullness of time is to do about 15 of these clusters around the state. So we'll approach 50 communities, and our small team can't do all those, so training is a big part of it. So in terms of the methodology, we really approach it from a kind of an experience design point of view. In terms of we need these pilot projects for these people to be ambassadors for the process. So what do they anticipate going in, trying to figure out how do we introduce a technology, how do we do it remotely, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the actual event itself in terms of how it plays out and what output is created. Asking people what the highlights were in the sense of what do they remember from the process. And then finally, if they'd recommend it, if they feel their time was valued or not. So that's kind of where we are in the process. And probably when this is seen, we'll have done the orientation sessions. Our platforms are basically, the first principle is to keep it simple. The pandemic has made Zoom more university accessible. I know in the orientation session that you folks did, Ryan, people are familiar with it and you need to train them up. And the common denominator in Zoom is if they don't understand any of the digital platforms or the whiteboards or things, people know how to do chat. And so at least they can write down their comments in chat, and then our team can process that through geolocate it and so on and so forth, and bring it into the overall system. And that's what we're basing it on. The other challenge or the other opportunity is using the breakout rooms in Zoom as the main conversation portal, and we're doing those with these 12-person teams, and they are going to, we have a kind of an ask of them if they sign up and agree. And one of the critical pieces is having a kind of a local citizen coordinator. We're fortunate in Warren to have a special education teacher whose husband is the principal of the high school, and she understands this process, and she's recruiting 50 people to participate in it. And so we need to attend to training, explaining, and also having a default of where people can people can be heard and respected. An amusing story in terms of digital access in rural broadband is a huge challenge. Warren has a drive-in movie theater that they've set up as an internet hub, broadband access, and if all else fails, you can get in your car and go to the drive-in theater and be online. And we make that clear in our recruitment that people have to understand Zoom and how to work in it. I might just close with saying that and you've seen these categories before. Typically a government plan or a development plan have the resources at their disposal to kind of fully illustrate and explain that. And from the equity point of view, what we're trying to do is create a similar point of view of existing residents and businesses, and then also a similar point of view of local institutions and newcomers. So that's the two kind of portions that are probably hardest to recruit and least represented in the outcomes. And in our, the process creates its own dynamic. And what we found is it's really interesting. The four different point of view plans really are different. And they've chosen from a menu and they've selected and prioritized different ones. It narrows down at the end of the day. It's remarkable that people seem to agree on 6 to 10 initiatives across all four. And that's really the essence of where we're going with this. And hopefully next year can report back and show how for this first city and then 2 other additional cities in the cluster have participated.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Timothy. And thanks to all of you. I'm looking at the clock here and unfortunately we're out of time, but this has been, I think, really insightful. And thank you all for sharing some of the tricks of what makes your work particularly compelling and useful, which is how you effectively engage the communities within which you work to improve your projects and ultimately make those places better. So thank you all for sharing some of that knowledge with us. So like I had mentioned, we're out of time for this panel. We're going to take a short 30-minute break now, but then when we come back, we will be teeing up a whole series of more exciting presentations for the remainder of the summit. So panelists, thank you all once again, and everybody else, I'll see you back here in 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.